Yeah. Good afternoon. We'll begin our Monday, May 17th, 2021 Commissioner meeting. And as usual, we'll start with the invocation. This afternoon, Dennis Ray, if you'll lead us in that, please, sir.
Okay, I want to read a little bit of scripture before I go into the prayer because it gives me a lot of comfort. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive them their sin and I will heal their land. That's in 2 Chronicles 7 through 14. Now if you care to, if you would bow your head. Our dear Heavenly Father, I come to you today as a sinner saved by grace. I humbly ask for you to protect and heal our land. My prayer today is to ask you, dear God, to give us the strength for all people to turn away from all of the wickedness that is so present in the world. I know by your own promise that if we call on you, you will hear us in heaven, forgive us of all our sins, and claim in your own words to heal this land. Empower us as leaders and citizens to live a Christian and God-fearing lifestyle, and let everyone see in how we live that we are following your words to make this a world that is God-loving and God-fearing. Please protect our county and all that serve it, law enforcement, fire, EMS, government workers, and just the people that make Union County great. And place your hands on this great nation and leave no doubt that you are on the throne and in full control of our world. Amen. Now if you would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I think I've spoken with all the commissioners, and I'd like to add a couple additions before we get to the approving the agenda. And it's a addition to for resolution for EMS. This is EMS week. Last week was law enforcement, and we'll have resolutions for both of those. So if there's any, can I have a motion to approve that change? It's a little out of ordinary, but so moved. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All righty. Employee recognition is an extremely important part of what we do here. Our employees are what make this county government run so efficiently, and we're fortunate to have so many blessed ones. We have one we want to recognize today. Senior social worker Pam Jose is being honored for going above and beyond to show care and compassion to a child in foster care. A young child required major surgery, and due to circumstances of placement, he did not have anyone who was able to be with him for an overnight stay in the hospital following his surgery. Jose asked supervisor for permission to travel across the state to spend the night in the hospital with the child, so he would have someone familiar with him. The management team recognized Jose's compassion actions by surprising her with the Spring 2021 Caught in the Act Award on April 21st, 2021 at the Human Services Building. Caught in the Act is a recognition program for Union County employees. This program allows for the opportunity to recognize and thank employees that go above and beyond expected roles in their job description. The recipients of the recognition program are selected 4 times a year. And I would like to ask Pam Jose to come up front to receive her certificate. And I'd also ask Ashley to come by, because we're going to get 2 photos. You're going to get one after one with the old man, and then you can get one. You'll be proud of it. Union County Board of Commissioners recognizes Pam Jose on the 17th day of May 2021 for exemplary service above and beyond the call of duty in caring for a child in foster care. Your initiative to travel across the state, be with the child as a role as a social worker, your thoughtful actions are appreciated and bring great pride to our county. And I thank you very much. You set the example for everyone. Where's our retired crew? Now let's take one more, but one she can be proud to share. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Great. Next, we will recognize our employees for their years of service, and we'll start with Tamara Parmesky, Community Support and Outreach, 5 years, and I apologize if I butchered that. Garrett Tucker, Public Works, 5 years. Jerry Austin, Sheriff's Office, 5 years, and Whitney Massey, Human Services, Business Ops, 5 years. And Brent Smith, we had a good 5 years of Brent, so we had Mark, you must have done a lot of recruiting back then, right? Next, we have Jackie Chavez with Community Support with 10 years. And with 15 years, we have Kevin Lee with Public Works, Rylan Headland with Sheriff's Office, and Kerry Raymond with the Sheriff's Office, all with 15 years. In May, we had retirements of Robin Hunter with the Sheriff's Office with 24 years, and Cynthia Mabry with Information Services for 27 years. We appreciate our employees and the service they provide, and we look forward to many more years. Next, we will address the EMS proclamation. And I'd like to read the proclamation first. To designate the week of May 16th through 21st, 2021 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical service is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services team are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas to access to the quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventive medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. And whereas the emergency medical services team consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police, operators, officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of the emergency medical services team, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specific training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. Whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now therefore, the Union County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 16th to 21st. Can I have a motion we accept this proclamation by the Board of Commissioners? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Brian, Brittany, Stephanie, can y'all come up, please? Come on, I didn't bite the other day.
Nope.
I had the privilege the other day to spend some time in EMS operations, and these young ladies were very helpful in explaining the process they go through and the challenges. Brian and I spent some time. I can tell you how impressed I was. And I asked them to be here because they're the ones that may show up at your door. And I'd like to present proclamation of emergency service. If you come on in, Brian, you can get in here too. All right?
Here we go. One, nope. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Next, we have Police Week that has just passed. And we had the opportunity last Friday to recognize those law enforcement that have given their lives for us. And that's tragic. But I tell you what, these guys and girls that give us law enforcement support, they do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. For that, we appreciate it. We're lucky to have the Sheriff's Office and our other local agencies throughout the county. So with that, Commissioner Rape, if you'll read the proclamation, please.
Okay. Chairman Helms was gracious enough to let me present this, and I'm very honored to do it. We know that the Sheriff's Department and Eddie Cathy is one of the reasons that Union County is so special, and we do appreciate all of y'all. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week, and whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of Union County play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of Union County, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the law enforcement agencies of Union County unceasingly provide a vital public service. Now therefore, the Union County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 9th through 15th, 2021 as National Police Week.
Sheriff, if you and your deputies will come forth.
Sheriff Cathy is like a lucky charm. Anytime you can associate yourself with him, good things start happening.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Richard, do we need to vote on that proclamation too?
Yeah, we have a motion to accept the law enforcement proclamation. All in favor? Aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
You made the motion?
Yeah. All right, next we have informal comments. We have one individual, Scott Levine. If you want to come up, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm a developer in Union County. I also reside in Union County, Waxhaw to be specifically. It's been brought to my attention here while I'm going through a zoning process here regard to lack of water and sewer. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, but as of right now, my plans are at an official halt. Do we know why? It's because we have no water. We have no sewer flow. My understanding is that we're selling this flow to other counties, such as Mecklenburg. And I'm curious to know if that's part of my flow. Why am I asking this? Because my understanding is this is my right to have on the property. Are there other agreements other than Mecklenburg? I'm requesting 5,000 gallons, not 900,000. What is the current split of commercial versus residential? Is it 90-10? Is it 88-12? I'm trying to figure out who you sold my allocation to so that I could buy it back. But then I found out we're not allowed to do so. I see that there's projects, residential, that are on 4 years out from where we are today. Is any of that flow available to me? I'm not asking for any work from the county. I just need to tap into the lines that are already existing. How is this property dropped from the calculations of water and sewer? I'm doing exactly what is inside Section 21, downtown Waxhaw. I'm using a mixed-use building up to 4 stories. Where's my water? Are we creating a new plan? If so, who is creating this plan? Is it the same team that created the previous plan, revamping a facility that is already above its maximum capacity? We put a 95% rule in place and issuing no new permits, as far as I know, for any commercial property or project in Waxhaw. I don't know if that goes for residential as well. As a homeowner, I do know that when I bought my land, it would have really bothered me if the school said, sorry, we're at capacity. You can't build your house because we're full over here. This is what I'm understanding now coming from UCPW. But I don't have a timetable. It's not been provided. I don't know if this is a 6-week hold, a 6-month hold, or I hope not a 6-year hold. Taxes are coming from me as a homeowner, not me as a business. I'm sure the county would like to collect. I'm looking to put an inn and a restaurant inside of downtown Waxhaw. Everybody loves the idea, but we can't seem to figure out how to get it through. I ran into nothing but red tape dealing with North Carolina Department of Transportation for almost 5 months now.
You have 30 seconds.
I appreciate the extra time. We had to redesign our plans even though it was built to the exact code that was specified, again, in Section 21 downtown Waxhaw regarding on-street parking, right-of-ways. I have none of that. NCDOT has stepped in and prevented us from making a loading-unloading zone because they say it's their street. When I looked into the Maps Repeal Act, it clearly says they should not be doing this. Again, I'm not getting the help and support to get this project through. I'm just getting more red tape and issues now regarding water. I would love to break ground, I'd love to get my permits, I'd love to build this. I need some help from you guys. I don't mean to come at you like this, but I'm just not getting answers anywhere that I've been looking. I appreciate your time today, I truly do. Thank you.
Sir, we have an item that'll be on old business that might give you some insight into some of your questions if you'll stick around till we cover that.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have for informal comments. Next, we have additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. And Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could bring item number 18 from the consent agenda and put it on the regular agenda, updating the 95% wastewater permitting cap.
Okay. Any other items? If not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent as amended.
Okay. We have a motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. After the consent agenda is old business, which is item 18, which is update on the 95% wastewater permitting cap. In January, the Board of Commissioners implemented a cap on the permitting of new wastewater extensions for all wastewater reclamation facilities. The cap established that once a facility reaches a point of 95% or more of actual flow plus permitted or obligated flow, all new permit submittal information for wastewater extensions should be put on hold. The attached information provided the average monthly flow, permitted but unconnected flow, and maybe we can answer some of Mr. Levine's questions at this
Certainly.
point.
Certainly. So one thing I just wanted to stress to the board is currently nothing has changed as far as the permit capacity in both your plants in 12 Mile Creek, which serves the property I think Mr. Levine is talking about, is at the 99% at this point in time capacity. That is actual flows plus permitted flows. Your cap is 95%, but most of that's made up of your actual flows. That's not because we permitted more projects. In Crooked Creek, it's at 86% actual flows plus permitted or obligated flows, which means there is a little additional capacity left in that plant at this point in time. I do want to clarify, Mr. Levine brought up a question. We don't sell capacity to the city of Charlotte. We have a contract with Charlotte where we send capacity to them in a different drainage basin. So we're not selling capacity or removing our capacity and sending that to another jurisdiction. That is an area which Charlotte serves for us, and we pay for capacity from them. That Waxhaw is not part of that area. That's not part of that area served by that 6 Mile Creek drainage property. Yes, sir.
Before you
Yeah.
go further, why don't you explain the concern he has with water? Because to my knowledge, we don't have a constraint on the water in that
Right.
area.
So I think the concern that Mr. Levine probably has is with our sewer capacity. We do not have a water capacity issue at this point in time. Our Catawba project, which serves Waxhaw, recently had an upgrade, so we have plenty of water serving Catawba at the moment. We have a Yadkin project which is underway that will come online in several years. Again, we don't have any constraints that I'm aware of on the Yadkin side of the county. So as far as water goes, we're in fine shape. It is the sewer where we have capacity issues.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It seems like maybe some years ago that there was some issues with water in Waxhaw due to some old lines or something like that. There's nothing like that we know of now?
I'm not aware of any. I got Mr. Levine's contact information. I want to find out a little bit more about his project, understand where it is, what it is, so I can sort of, I guess, find out, number one, what are the concerns. There are areas within Waxhaw where we have limitations on sewer because of old gray line systems. I'm not saying that this property is part of that. It could be. Again, I want to research it and understand that, but where we do have an old gray line system, there are some limitations on what kind of uses can go on those properties. So I want to understand the full scope before I can, give Mr. Levine some information on how he can move forward with his project. As far as the flows go, we haven't seen any changes. I'm sorry, yes, sir.
I have a question. I was confused. Is it an existing building or a building you're wanting to build?
It's a raw land that already has the connections there. I just need to tap into them.
Yeah, and same thing. I just want to understand all the details so I can give him some good, solid information on that. As far as the future capacities for each one of the projects, currently to date, nothing has changed. We have a significant number of projects that are in line and waiting to gain capacity over time. Some are in what are called sketch plan, where they're really more conceptual. Others are in engineering design. In 12 Mile, that adds up to over 1.5 million gallons. Keep in mind, sketch plans don't always come to fruition. Sometimes they are just people going through the process, but they never move forward with engineering. But today, if everybody were to move forward, that would be 1.5 million gallons in the 12 Mile Creek plant basin. For Crooked Creek, we currently have almost 500,000 gallons. It's same concept, sketch plan and engineering plans. That is well over the plant's ability to serve that. But again, sketch plans don't always move forward. It all depends on whether or not they want to go through the full engineering. So nothing has changed as far as projects right now that are in the process. You may see over time a few more that are waiting to be permitted for 12 Mile, but just can't be permitted because we're at that 95% capacity. For Crooked Creek, again, we have capacity in the plant, but there is a limitation at Crooked Creek because there's what we call an interceptor project, which prevents some developments from moving forward in that interceptor location because they're constrained by the amount of flow that can actually go to the plant. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Rushing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions I had, because the last meeting we were talking about this, we discussed that there was in February an over 7.5 million, I think 7.6 million gallon usage on a 7.5 million gallon plant.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, and so people don't understand, we're not pouring this into the creeks. How much sewer, right now we're basically around 6 million gallons per day in that plant that's rated for 7.5 million gallons. On a given day, how many gallons, millions of gallons a day of sewer can that plant manage?
So it can actually handle up to 12 million gallons hydraulically. So if you were to have a flow in one day that exceeded our rated permitted capacity, we can handle that. The plant is designed for 2.5 over its actual permitted capacity. That's over 18 million gallons.
2.5 times, not 2.5 million gallons.
2.5 times the amount of permitting. That's over 18 million gallons. However, there is a restriction at the plant where only about 12 million gallons can come into the plant. At that point, if there's more, yes, we would have an overflow if we can't find some other way to divert it or to handle that flow. I can tell you that we do exceed 7.5 million gallons periodically. On really wet weather days, we can get 9 or 10 million gallons, but the plant can handle it. We're permitted to have until 7.5 million gallons on average for the month, on average. So the question that Commissioner Rushing is asking about in a report that we had to submit to the state, we had to tell them what our average for the month was. And for that particular plant, we did go over our average just a little bit over the month. We did receive a notice from the state, but it's basically just putting us on notice saying, listen, guys, we noticed that you went over your permitted capacity. Keep an eye on it. That's not something that you should have a regular occurrence of, but periodically when you have heavy wet weather flows, you might have that issue. If you notice from the data that I gave you, 2020 was a very, very wet year for us. If you look at those totals for the month, I believe in May, in one of the basins, it was over 12 inches of rain in 1 month. In the other basin, I think it was over 9. So Crooked Creek averaged, I believe, almost 6.5 inches of rain for the entire month, averaged, and 12 Mile averaged over 5 inches. That's a lot of rain for a month.
The other question, and just kind of for clarification, you know, we received calls, Mr. Levine, your project, other projects, we're getting calls regularly about what's going on, when are we going to know? And we understand and we completely get that there's real dollars committed, there's a lot of money being invested, and that we need to come up with something soon as an answer. And over the years, different commissioners, I know Commissioner Simpson, Commissioner Helms, Commissioner Rape, and even Commissioner Williams coming on board, he researched the Wake County, Raleigh area, and there's allocation policies in different areas. And those allocation policies work with, so that towns, when they make rezoning decisions and decisions on sewer connections, they use that as part of their connections. They really don't have to think that much about schools, you know, because they're not responsible for providing schools. But, you know, and up until now, water and sewer hasn't been that big of an issue, but we're trying to work through that with the towns, that they include that in their decision-making process, that sewer is a scarce resource and water can be a scarce resource, so how to best use it. What are you finding out from the towns? Are you getting good cooperation from the towns, and an update maybe a little bit on that
Certainly.
process?
So we do have sort of a draft agreement, not sort of, we do have a draft agreement that the manager and I have been going over with some of the towns on this. We hope to have that finalized maybe by the end of this week or certainly next week. We have a meeting with those towns later this week. I'm sorry, on the 28th, not this week, later, on the 28th. So we hope to have something finalized that we think from the staff level we're comfortable with, and then we'll circulate that to the elected officials. Because I want to stress that this has not been sent to the elected officials in any of the towns, nor to the Board of Commissioners. We wanted to work at it and see if we could all come to a staff level understanding and then submit it to the elected officials for you guys to consider.
Yeah.
So
So-
we're making good progress.
So just to be clear, like Mr. Levine, in your situation and others, the town of Waxhaw, they're going to have to have a meeting of their board to approve whatever the staff comes up with. We'll have to approve it. Indian Trails, Stylings, other towns may have, you know, they're going to have to approve it as well.
Sure.
So once they approve it and then we approve it, the process, we've already voted to expand that plant that you're on. So that plant can be, it's already permitted by the state for 12 million gallons a day, and it's only at 7.5 today. So there's expansion room there. That's going to happen. We voted to fund that, and it's moving forward, right?
Yes, sir. It is moving forward.
Thank you.
I think one thing that's critical is, and I'm looking at the data you put out on the various plants. And if you look at last year, like you said, it was a heavy year. But if you look at the beginning of this year, the first 3 months followed consistent with last year. April looks like it's the first one we've had any kind of dry. So that's a rolling average, right?
Yes, sir. It is.
So
12 months. Yes, sir.
just because we're at 0.6 in April doesn't mean that, you know, the green light comes back on.
That's
It has
right.
to be statistically safe to relieve that, right?
Yes, it's going to take a number of months of normal weather conditions for us to bring those actual flows down.
I don't think anything normal lately is.
Yes, sir.
So. Any other question for him, David?
Yes, I just wanted to ask a few questions so everybody in this room is clear, everybody who's listening is clear. Brian, does the county pick winners and losers in terms of who gets sewer capacity?
No, sir, we do not.
Who actually makes the permitting decisions for sewer?
So the now permitting for zoning or?
I mean, when somebody gets a permit for sewer, does that happen at the state level?
It does, happens at the state level, yes, sir. Sorry, I didn't understand where you were going with that. So we actually intake all the information, we review the plans, we sign off that the plans meet our requirements, and then that is sent to the state, and the state actually issues a permit. So it doesn't matter if it's residential, commercial, It's who gets to the state first, and the state reviews it and issues the permit.
Also, has the 12-mile facility, has it been expanded? Was it expanded last year?
It was expanded from 6 million to 1.5, to 7.5 million gallons, and I believe that was in 2019 that took effect.
Okay. And has the board given direction this year in terms of an additional expansion at 12
Yes, sir.
Mile?
The board actually directed us to move forward with an additional 1.5 million gallon expansion. Now, again, that will take 3 to 4 years for that to come online.
Thank you. And just a few other things. I know all the commissioners have gotten this information on actual flows out of 12 Mile, permitted or unconnected or obligated flows. And there are a number of things that just jump out at me. I mean, if you look at the last 8 months, full months, from April going all the way back to September 2020, 7 of those 8 months, if you combine the actual flows and the obligated flows, 7 of those 8 months, you're over 100%. You've got over 100% capacity. 101% back in March, 124% back in February, 112% in January. I can just go on and on, 105% in December. This last month, when we had a little bit less precipitation, it was 92%. Another thing I found interesting is if you look at the first part of this year, the first 4 full months that we had 14.2 inches of precipitation. Well, we actually had 18.8 inches of precipitation in the first 4 months of 2020. So the precipitation's actually been lower thus far in 2021. What that tells me is it may be somewhat of an issue, but by and large, it's just that the county is growing. I mean, we put in this additional capacity, 1.5 million gallons a day of capacity, and it's getting used up. I mean, that is the story. And it's not because this board has been sitting on its haunches and not growing the system. It's not that we haven't been willing to look at future expansions. This is the nature of the beast. I mean, we are growing fast, both in unincorporated areas and in town areas, and this is why we're wrestling with what we're wrestling with. I am sensitive, believe me, I am sensitive to applicants who are are well along in the process and are waiting to get permitted, but we also have to run a system responsibly, manage it responsibly. And I just can't in good conscience eliminate a cap where I'm seeing in 7 of the last 8 months, we're exceeding 100% of actual and obligated flows.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this goes back to the early 2000s. This is something that back then we had, and for the staff and past staff and the current staff have done way better job of managing this than was done back then. Back in 2006, we had 13 million gallons permitted and pending on a 3 million gallon plant. The same plant had 3 million gallons of capacity, but people were coming in the door and getting permits and making business decisions based on that. And you would rather it be like this. You would rather not sink in, a couple $1 million into a project before you found this out. This is really a better way of doing it. And it doesn't seem like it right now, but any developer out there, any builder, anybody thinking about developing needs to understand that you would rather not be bankrupted and lose all that money before you make those decisions than to go out and invest and put real money into a project, buy land, buy projects, and then find out there's zero capacity. Not only is there zero capacity, we were so underwater back then that there was no way of getting out. A lot of people it hurt and put a lot of people out of business, and I don't ever intend to go back to that. And we're just being cautious, and I hope you understand that. But we haven't over-permitted really right now because we're doing what we're able to do. The plant's able to manage that flow You know, at 2.5 back then, we were still over that, you know, so at 3 million gallons, 2.5 with that, you know, you're looking at, we were still over that permitted and pending. So I think it's been managed better, a lot better, and if everybody just hang with us, these decisions are going to be coming. There's just some pieces have to be put in that puzzle before we can move forward. And I think this whole board's committed to making that work, and I think the towns sound like they're coming to the table, that they're committed in making a better plan so that we all know what we're doing versus just one hand not knowing what the other's doing. And that's very important to be able to move forward and do it the right way and make sure that people are not making investment decisions. There are a lot of developers that I've talked to that are looking elsewhere right now just to make sure that they, that they see that we're working through this and being more cautious. And again, that's smarter with your money to be cautious and not jump into something and spend a large amount of money before you know what's going on. But we're working toward that, and Union County is still going. And we also talked this week about maybe commercial. You were going, I don't know if you can talk about that with legal.
We're looking at some options for these capital projects that we have, and how do we handle those projects that are affected by, say, the EQ tank or the Interceptor project. I don't have an answer for that at this point in time, but we're obviously looking at that. That's not specific towards commercial, that's specific towards those capital projects that are restricting those developments.
But we cannot reserve, like a project like he's talking about, we cannot reserve specifically for
a commercial. No,
because of state requirements, right?
We cannot call that a utility-based rationale. So I do want to stress that at no point in time did our staff ever submit a request permit to the state where we exceeded 100% of our capacity. I do want the board to understand that. I know Commissioner Rushing has had some sensitive concerns about that in the past. When we know what the actual flows are and what permits are requested, we do not submit a permit request to the state that we know will exceed 100% of that plant's capacity, and I want to stress that. Now, that doesn't mean that actual flows don't change and you see differences in that, but we have never submitted a permit request to the state where we've exceeded 100% of the plant's rated capacity. I want to make sure the board is comfortable that we are managing your plant in an effective way.
As Commissioner Rushing,
One more thing. Mr. Levine, Brian, if you've never met Brian, our county manager has put Brian, he's in charge of public works and planning in Union County. So he's the guy to talk to. If you get with him, he'll be able to explain those questions that you had, because you did have some things that somebody told you that was wrong. There were some things that you understand that are not correct. But this guy he's been put in that position by our manager.
This is the same team that did the revamp on the last year on the plan? Is this the same group in place?
Do what? No, this.
That did the previous expansion. Is this the same?
No, these.
New team.
When did you come on? What year did you come on?
it's been 2 years.
2019. So since the last one, we have a manager, and Brian's been in this position new. So he's the guy to talk to.
Thank you.
The last question.
I think one thing that your data provided is that the latest 1.5 million came online February of 2020.
Was it February 2020? Okay, I
That's
thought it was
what
2019.
That's what the documentation
Okay,
says.
my mistake.
And the point I'm making is that even expanding that next 1.5 million gallon is a short-term solution. I'll tell you that our staff and our manager are working on a long-term solution, and hopefully we'll have that for you shortly. But we recognize the situation you're in, and clearly want to mitigate it as much as possible. But the state is one that lays out the rules that we have to follow. So, but Mr. Matthews is very transparent. He may tell you something you don't want to hear, but it'll be the truth.
Yes, sir.
Anything else for Brian? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Next under new business is item number 19, Sergeant Jeffrey W. Green Memorial Bridge Resolution of Support. You gonna bring us up
Afternoon,
to
Mr.
speed on that,
Chairman.
Bjorn?
Say again?
You gonna bring us up to speed on that?
I am, and then I'm
Okay.
going to hand it off. So this is an agenda item that has come to us essentially at the end of the process. Sergeant Jeffrey Green was killed in the line of duty in November 2014. The Union County Women of Law Enforcement have proposed a memorial naming the Skyway Bridge, pulled it up on this aerial, and they have raised the funds to process the request through the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Ms. Pauline Sharon is here on behalf of that organization. I'm going to turn it over to her to answer any questions you may have and explain the background of it. You received quite a few resolutions and letters of support in your agenda packets. Since the agenda packets went out, we have a couple more from the Unionville Baptist Church and from a small business owner of Panache Salon and Spa here in Monroe. So I'll turn it over to Pauline.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Pauline Sharon. I'm familiar to most of you, I think, hopefully in a good way. But I'm retired from the Union County Sheriff's Office. I've been retired since 2018, and once I left that position, I wanted to continue to stay in some way connected with the law enforcement community. So I came up with the idea of a nonprofit. We formed it. Have a couple of the ladies here with me that are members of Union County Women Law Enforcement also. So we just got to thinking about Jeff. We hope that his memory will never leave us. And Jeff was a friend of ours and a coworker of ours. And we just got to thinking that in traveling, I've seen a lot of different bridges and roadways and different memorials to veterans that have been killed, and to also police officers and law enforcement officers. And it's like, why can't we do something like that for Jeff? So we applied to the Department of Transportation to do this project. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but there's a lot of steps to it. And the first thing is you fill out your application and you submit it to like a subcommittee. They take a look at it and tell you whether, yes, you can go further, or no, it's dead in the water. So that's where we started. We heard back quickly from them and said, yes, these are the different steps that you have to do to fulfill the application process and get that back to us. So today, coming before you folks is the last step that we have on our process to submit the entire package back to DOT, and we're expecting a favorable response on that. So, and with your help, they also asked for a $2,000 administrative fee with our application to there. We are not asking for any public monies from you folks. We didn't ask from the city of Monroe, which we've got a resolution from them last week. We put the idea out to the general public and we got public funds. We actually exceeded what we asked for in about 3 or 4 days. So we have the money to submit with the application package. It's just one thing that's on our heart to recognize Jeff and his ultimate sacrifice, and to hopefully to let other folks see that there are dangers. We don't normally see these in Union County, and hopefully that this will be the only one in the law enforcement community that will need to be done.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution of support as presented.
Okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So happy to do this for Jeff and his family and support this. Would you recognize the ladies that are with you today?
I certainly will. Troyana Helms is on the back row there. She's our secretary of our organization. Donna Ennis is with us. She's a member. April Green was actually going to try to be here today, but she's had one of her family members had some type of a medical emergency today, and it caused her not to be there. We have a few other folks. We don't have a big organization. It's just a handful of us. We're trying to recruit more folks to become a part of us, but these two ladies were able to come today to show support.
Well, thank you for what you're doing with this, and I'm proud to support it.
Thank you.
Mark, did I read that Sergeant Green was the only law enforcement we've lost probably in my lifetime?
Yes, in Union County.
In Union
For
County.
Union County Sheriff's Office, I'm sorry. Yes, Union County Sheriff's Office.
Well, thank you very much for your past service, and thank you for what you ladies are doing right now.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And also, I'd like to thank Bjorn Hansen. He has just been very
He's got a big head
Very on
already.
top of it.
Don't give him.
He's been very on top of things and helped to walk us through this, and we certainly appreciate his help. Thank
All
you.
right. Are you capable of making it up for the next one, Bjorn? Next, we have item 20, critical intersection analysis, phase 2 design and cost estimate adoption. I'm gonna pick on you when I can, bro, and you know
Sure.
that.
I am up to present a second agenda item. This one is the update of the critical intersection program. We have a grant that we are getting close to completing for a study of 5 intersections throughout Union County for design and cost estimation. Going to go through the background that got us to this point, the 5 intersections that were evaluated through this process, the process we used to evaluate them, preferred alternatives and public outreach, the request to you, and next steps in the process to actually get these implemented. So this is something that's been around since 2014. We identified an initial 15 intersections. We were pretty successful in getting the majority of them funded, so we refreshed the list in 2019 with 15 additional intersections. We did that in-house and then received design grants from CARTPO to group them into 2 bundles for design work. The first group was in 2019-2020 with 6 of them. 2 of them have since been funded for implementation, and we're working on additional 5 now. The ones in gray were evaluated last year. NC 75 in Old Providence was funded for roundabout. 200 in Old Camden was funded for an all-way stop. And the ones that we're evaluating this time are in navy blue, 601 in Brief in Fairview, Poplin and Unionville Indian Trail Road, which is in Monroe, Bonds Grove Church, and Waxhaw Marvin, which is in Marvin, 75 in Potter, which is in Mineral Springs, and 200 in Plyler Mill, which is in unincorporated Union County. We started the process in the fall with data collection and developing alternatives in the winter, went out to the public through a virtual format in the spring, evaluated the feedback, refined the alternatives, and recommended an alternative, and have been going out to the municipalities and now to you for selection of an alternative, and then the report will be finalized in June. So we went out to the public in March and early April, online, social media, press releases. We also sent out mailers to property owners within a certain distance, up to a quarter mile of the intersections. That was very effective in getting feedback. Almost 700 comments overall. We did have a drop-in meeting that was online for people to attend for each of them, and we got approximately 10 people per location, but they were the right people because typically they were close to the intersection and interested in the actual project. So that was very helpful. The first intersection is actually in unincorporated Union County. We looked at 2 alternatives. First one is turn lane. This is the mini storage is right here in the corner. Monroe's up here in the northeast. And the first alternative was turn lane. This wasn't as simple as we at first thought because there's a culvert right here over a creek that would have to be expanded with an additional culvert in order to put in the turn lane. So it actually was a fairly expensive project. You can see the benefits in terms of crash reductions as well as delay, approximately $2.4 million. I'll say for all of these projects, they're pretty padded with contingencies. That's a requirement through CARTPO. They've been burned in the past with people coming in with low estimates and then having to come back to the well for more money. So these projects typically have anywhere from 30 to 40% contingencies built into them that you hope isn't actually used. In terms of the feedback for this intersection, lower cost, however, it's dangerous to have the turn lane project because people turning left onto 200 South now have to deal with 2 lanes of traffic coming southbound. The left turning traffic might actually block some vehicles coming from Monroe, so they didn't like that. Alternative 2 was a roundabout, much lower crash rates, a little bit of a benefit in terms of safety, and not that much more in terms of cost.
Because no culvert? They don't have to
Because no
bother with
culvert, that's right.
Okay.
So the benefits in terms of that, safer, more efficient, better traffic flow, slows the traffic, and is more attractive. However, it is a little bit more expensive. And I will note that in terms of the seems unnecessary, for any of these intersections, it doesn't mean they have to be done right now. But at some point, there may be a collective will to do something, and what this allows us to do is to pull this off the shelf and say, this is that something. It allows us between the DOT, any municipality, and the county to say, this is the project we're going to go try and get funded. In terms of the public feedback, 21 for the roundabout, 13 for the turn lanes, only 3 for neither, and 0 for no preference. This was, I believe, our lowest response rate. We tried to get more responses along this corridor by giving flyers to the businesses up along the corridor. Helped a little bit, but not that much. The recommendation coming out of the staff who reviewed this, which includes the NCDOT, CARTPO, and the municipalities, although they didn't necessarily weigh in on this one, was for the roundabout. So before we
ask you
move
a
on to
question?
the others, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. There's an old item that's worked very well for centuries, not centuries, but decades, and that's called stoplight. Why is that not an option? Because I'm very familiar with this intersection, and it's rough getting out. But, you know, I'm noticing on one of your others, you want to replace a working stoplight that's pretty effective. Can you tell me why we're not looking at all our options?
The
and
reason
only
why
doing
is because the DOT doesn't like to put up signals anymore if they don't include turn lanes as a part of it, which means you go back to that culvert situation, so the signal itself would still be pretty expensive. Secondly, they're not as safe as the roundabouts, so these decisions are a life cycle type of cost. It's not only the cost to install it now, but it's the cost to maintain it over a period of time, and also what are the accumulated congestion and safety benefits that happen over that time. The DOT really is trying to get away from signals that are just by themselves if they don't have a turn lane component to them. So that's unfortunately a response you're going to hear quite a bit for different locations. I'm anticipating the one at 601 in brief as a second response. Okay, so
The other pieces, you know, you show multiple options, and some of them, the price difference is considerable.
yes, it is.
Kind of the popular Unionville Indian Trail.
Yeah, this one, it's kind of unique that the turn lanes versus the roundabout are actually fairly close in cost. But honestly, the safety benefit really trumps the turn lane improvements. Are there any other questions about this specific location? Because compared to the others, this is the one that the decision is solely on you. It's not a request to endorse what the municipalities have already selected.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The next one is 75 and Potter. This is in Mineral Springs. Went to them last Thursday night with the exact same information you're seeing here. They had 79 public comments. You had a pretty impactful set of alternatives. Anything you do at this intersection is going to affect a lot of utilities: sewer, water, stormwater, electricity, gas, people's property, businesses. It's going to be impactful no matter what you do. The turn lane option and the roundabout options were the two that were considered. The roundabout was pretty big, and the public feedback was that it was just too much. And really the comparison between these two projects, they're both beneficial. The question is, how much benefit do you want? Because it's roughly in line with the cost. If you want more benefit, it's going to cost you more, it's going to have more impact. If you have a sweet spot in terms of how much you're willing to spend and get a certain amount of benefit, then the turn lane improvement is the project. And that was what the town unanimously selected last Thursday night, was the turn lane project.
Now, the roundabout would take out the barber shop, probably Farley's Pizza, and part of the Shell Station, and part of the Methodist Church?
No, the only one it will definitely take out is the barber shop. It'll take out some parking lot near the Farley's Pizza, but it wouldn't affect the businesses, the buildings themselves. So it was shifted away from the gas station to make sure you didn't touch the pumps and the tanks, because that would get expensive very quickly. So the only one it would definitely impact would be the barber shop, and it would do that no matter what, because the building is literally right on the right-of-way. So are there any questions about the two alternatives and what was selected by the town?
Would the stoplight stay with the turn lanes?
Yes, the signal would stay. You just would add left and right turn lanes on all the approaches and sidewalks approaching the intersection. Okay, moving along. Next one is Bonds Grove and Waxaw Marvin Road. You had a squaring up of the intersection on the left and a roundabout on the right. This one had a lot of feedback from Waxaw and Marvin, by far the most, 390 comments. It was running over 80% for the roundabout, and that was what the Village of Marvin selected as their recommendation. It has a lot better safety characteristic and a lot better traffic benefit as well in terms of the congestion. More expensive by about 50%, but that was what was selected by the Village of Marvin as their alternative. And I will say that the property owners on all the approaches were a part of this process, attended the meetings. They're aware of the impacts for this, and they understood the need for it. The next intersection is 601 at Brief, and I would also say at this location, we also spoke with the property owners on all of the approaches. The one on the left is for turn lane improvements on the side street. You didn't have turn lanes on 601 itself because that wasn't necessarily the crash issue. It was really on the side street. And the signal, again, wasn't selected because it didn't meet warrants. And we looked at the history of the signals down 601 towards Monroe that did exist. And for the most part, the reason why they were built is because they didn't have roundabouts as an option back then. If they had built them nowadays, several of them would be roundabouts because they didn't necessarily meet the signal warrants. And the DOT, again, doesn't want to put in more signals that aren't meeting the safety or the volumes to necessitate them. So the roundabout was selected. We presented this to Town of Fairview last week as well, and they unanimously selected the roundabout. And honestly, it was because several of the town council members, as they knew they had this agenda item coming up, they went and really sat there at that intersection. They recognized that Brief Road is hairy to try and cross. And slowing the traffic down was an explicit outcome of selecting the roundabout. So they understood that this was more expensive. They understood that in order to get this funded, that they're probably going to be asked for some money in the future to help pay for local match, and they unanimously recommended the roundabout.
Is that going to be a larger roundabout to facilitate the volume of tractor trailers?
Well, it's certainly going to have a larger, you see the donut outside of the green is the gray, that's concrete, that's mountable, so that's always designed for the semi-trucks to be able to traverse the intersection. So it will be designed to accommodate that type of vehicle. Next one is Poplar and Unionville Indian Trail Road. This one is shown with the four-way stop as an interim project because it was actually, let me go back. This one, I found out the day of the meeting to Fairview, DOT actually funded as an interim project. They funded rumble strips and advanced signage notification on Brief Road to alert people that this intersection is coming up so they don't either crash into vehicles behind them that are queued up or go too far into the intersection, which apparently is an issue. So that's an interim improvement that is occurring at this intersection as a byproduct of the awareness that was raised through this process. And that comes up on this one as well, Poplar and Unionville Indian Trail Road. Over 90% of the residents wanted the roundabout, and that's what Monroe selected at their meeting last week. But the NCDOT also got some interim funds to put an all-way stop at this location as well. There's been 2 fatalities at this location, and it has turn lanes. the roundabout was selected. If the all-way stop doesn't work or the volumes exceed what an all-way stop can accommodate, then the alternative to move to is a roundabout, but that's what was selected by the town as what was overwhelmingly supported by the public. So those are the 5 intersections that we went through. We started it in the fall. We're finishing up on schedule. After we get some guidance from your body in terms of preferences, we will finalize the report. That'll be complete in June. Do the closeout activities with CARPO, and then all of these designs and cost estimates are available to the NCDOT, to Union County, and to the municipalities to apply for any and all funding opportunities that come available. So that's the next steps in the process, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
My concern is, I came down 74 today. 74 with the super street was going to be a godsend for us, and it's turned out to be a nightmare. Because according to the mayor of Indian Trail, accidents have tripled. You can't go north-south on them hardly anymore without difficulty. They've got where you can't turn right on red. People are doing it anyway, jeopardizing.
I
have a lot of
haven't seen
concern.
that data.
Huh?
I haven't seen that data. I mean, I understand I drive through sometimes as well. Those Michigan lefts can be somewhat frustrating. I don't have any information about the crash history. I'll be sure to look into that.
Yeah, that's, I mean, on several occasions, Indian Trails Council have told me that
Okay.
it's gotten
I'll look-
worse instead of better, and it's a nightmare to go through it.
I'll look into
So,
that. These were designs that went through public feedback, went through, the DOT who owns all these roads, their feedback, and consultants' assessment, and this is what the municipalities chose as their alternatives. So it's being placed to you. None of them are super streets or reduced conflict intersections. They're a combination of turn lane projects and roundabout projects.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I will not be supporting it. The reason being is there are other alternatives that worked historically, and their take is they're only going to do roundabouts and super streets. I don't find that as an acceptable process. That takes a lot of resources that the county needs at other intersections and everything, and consumes it. So just to be upfront with you, we've had this conversation before, so you're not surprised.
Nope, I'm not.
Any, Commissioner Rushing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bjorn, and a lot of people may get confused watching this meeting as to Union County's authority and ability to fund road improvements. And I want to make sure that I'm correct in this, that if we bought you a machine, and I can only envision something Dr. Seuss would come up with, that could put pavement in a pothole and roll over it and flatten it down, you couldn't drive it, right? That we cannot fund road improvements, they don't belong to us. But we can supplement to get these projects done quicker, but Union County is not in control of our roads.
I mean, developers make improvements to roads as part of their mitigation all the time, and you do it under encroachment with some sort of a permit. And the same would hold true for us. So if we wanted to go get a permit and make improvements, we could do that. I wouldn't recommend it, because we have a good partner in the DOT that they're willing, because they're gonna oversee everything anyway, and it's not a fun experience to have two chefs in the kitchen. So they have a good partnership with us to administer a lot of these projects on our behalf. We just go get the money. So really our role here is to establish priorities, and then to establish the designs, and to then serve as a partner either for local match or for,
But we don't
support
own,
through the
the
funding.
county, what I'm getting at is the county does not own.
No, that's correct. We don't own any of these
We
roads.
don't own
They're
any
all
DOT
NC
right-of-ways.
They're all NCDOT owned.
They have to approve it, they have to be, they make the decisions, we just, what we're doing here can be some supplemental funding to get the project moved up on a list or done quicker.
Well, it also serves as the design. If a project moves forward, there's not a lot of debate. If we say we need to do something at 75 and Potter, between the DOT, Mineral Springs, and Union County, there would be agreement that we're doing a turn lane project with keeping the signal and that's the project. Same things at Bonds Grove Church and Waxhaw Marvin. It gives us that agreement, allows us to quickly respond because we don't need to say, well, what does the public think, or what's the best alternative, or what's it going to cost? We have that information, allows us to be nimble.
And the towns do control some of their streets, so
They do.
they have, they have some control, like City of Monroe, you see them out working on potholes, they can do that because they have ability to do that on their own streets.
They own many streets, that's correct.
You know, as far as, yeah, I'll support what the towns support. You know, the one that we have to make the decision on, you know, Jerry, you live down there, you've got a lot of roundabouts on 200. What do you think about the community there?
There at Plyler Mill, seems logical to me, the roundabout.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Dorn, I got a text from Loretta Melicani. She said she would be glad to add a pothole division if you would head it up.
I talked with Loretta quite a bit. I picked up some trash on her
She
behalf.
said it would have to be on Saturday.
I can do
And it
that.
would be pro bono.
I can do that.
Okay.
I have a shovel.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If that's the end of the discussion, I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and proceed with these 5 plans as the study and towns have recommended. That we go ahead and approve
Further
these
discussion?
designs for the 5 intersections.
Does that include the Plyler Mill that we're making the decision on?
Yes, the roundabout, which is the study recommendation for Plyler Mill.
I can tell you, I don't have a problem with the recommendations from the local municipalities. My problem is the limited options. It's like you can get your hand cut off here, or you can get cut off here. So that's my objection. So we have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you for your time.
Next, we have the county manager's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We certainly have a lot going on around Union County. I have one item that I'd like to bring to your attention and to the public's attention this afternoon. As part of the stimulus package, COVID stimulus package that Union County was awarded, over $7.23 million for emergency rental assistance program. This program is about to launch. Next Monday, May the 24th, will be our program launch. I'd like to tell you a little bit about that, and then give you some information of where you can find some additional information if you would like to. But information will be available on our main webpage. That would be at ucgov.info/ERAP. You can find that information on our Union County webpage. It will take you to a program that will launch, and anyone who is eligible, and I'll tell you what the available assistance is and what the eligibility is in just a second. But this website will allow you to apply for the emergency rental assistance and supply all backup documentation. It can all be uploaded either by the applicant or the landlord who may apply on behalf of a renter online. So what is the program? It is assistance, financial assistance with rent, utility, and home home energy cost, and other expenses related to housing. Utilities include separately stated electricity, gas, water, sewer, trash removal, energy costs such as fuel oil. Eligible households may receive up to 12 months worth of assistance plus an additional 3 months if it's determined that the extra months are needed to ensure housing stability and funds are available. This program actually assists with utility cost and rent that is in arrears, and the portion that is in arrears is paid first through the program. Now, for who qualifies. Those that qualify must qualify for unemployment or have experienced a reduction in household income, incurred a significant cost, or experienced a financial hardship due to COVID-19, or demonstrates a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And the household income must be at or below 80% of the area median income. Expenses must have been incurred after March 13th of 2020. So you can see this program covers expenses that go back to last March 2020. And priority is given to applicants whose income is less than 50% of the area median income and has been unemployed for the past 90 days. Just to give you an idea about the area median income levels that do qualify under this program, in the income limit area, which Union County is a part of, the median family income, the base level is $83,500. And I'll use a family of four. For a family of four, the 50% income limit would be $41,750. So if you make at that level or lower, you qualify for this program. And if you are at the 80% of the AMI level, for a family of four would be $66,800. So 66,800 qualifies. The $41,750 gets you priority status. The program begins next Monday, and these funds have to be awarded and distributed by September 30th of 2021. So we have a few months left in this year for folks to apply and to receive assistance through this program. Also, there's a second round of emergency rental assistance that is coming that will extend this period, but we'll have information about that at a later date. So Monday, the website turns on and landlords and/or renters can begin to apply for this assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Rushing.
No comments.
Commissioner Simpson.
No comments.
Mr. Williams.
Yes, just a brief comment. I wanted to clarify that I think the Public Works staff has done an admirable job in managing based on a rolling average. I understand that's the means by which you've been managing against the cap. What I was referring to in our discussion earlier on the 95% cap was the month by month. So if you add the actual flows plus the obligated flows, you do have a number of months there that are over 100%. But as you look at it in terms of a rolling average, we have not indeed exceeded 100%. So I do want to make sure that's clear. And it just really highlights the sense of urgency in terms of addressing this problem, the sense of importance in managing it responsibly. So that was really just my point in pointing out the month-by-month flows and obligated flows. Thank you.
Mr. Ray. I would like to again thank our sheriff's deputies that are still here. We appreciate the service y'all provide us on a day-to-day basis, and the resolution was heartfelt, but we do appreciate everything. So with that, I will make a motion that we go into closed session. Manager's looking at me, he's going to forget. I move the board go into closed session for the following purposes. In accordance with GS 143-318-11A3, to consult with an attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege. In accordance with GS 143-318-11A4, to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other business, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives, and in accordance with GS 143, 31811A1, to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to GS 143, 31810E. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Levine, thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts.
Thanks for giving me some time, guys. Appreciate it.